as the country faces the dismal prediction that a typical energy bill could rise to £3,600 by October, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is being accused of being AWOL on the issue.
Well, later he'll unveil his party's plans to tackle the crisis, calling, as the Liberal Democrats already have, for the energy price cap to be frozen at the current £1,971. Well, Sir Keir Starmer joins us now from central London. Good morning to you. I mean, you're a bit late on this one, aren't you? There have been calls for a plan from Labour for some time. Why have we not heard from you sooner when the country's in crisis over these increasingly more expensive energy bills?
Well, look, let's just tackle that head on. It was last September I made the argument about insulating homes to keep bills down in the first place. It was January that I made the argument about a windfall tax. It took the government 5 months to catch up with that idea and then U-turn. So in January, I proposed that VAT bills be cut from energy bills, and Rishi Sunak is only just catching up with that. And today I've set out a comprehensive plan. And this plan started, I'd say, about 2 months ago when I tasked my team. I knew the figures, you've just read them out, these really terrible figures of average costs going up to £3,500 for energy bills in October, and then going up again, by the way, to about £4,200 in January. I said to my team at the beginning of July, I want a fully costed, comprehensive plan, and what I want to do is to freeze this to make sure those prices don't take effect at all. So not a plan that allows the prices to go up and then says to people, well, we might give you a bit of money afterwards. Because I know from my own family background, my dad worked in a factory, my mum was a nurse, I know what it is like to struggle with bills, and I didn't think it was right to say to families, let your bills go up through the roof, and we might do something about it afterwards. I wanted a plan that cut it at source and said we're not going to allow those rises to go ahead. And that's what we've put on the table. And frankly, it's a political choice. We either allow the oil and gas companies in the North Sea, who've been making huge profits, to carry on doing that whilst every family struggles, or we do something about it. What we've put on the table is a fully costed, comprehensive plan that sets out how we'll
Sorry to interrupt, but we have had to wait for this plan, haven't we? Labour have been critical of the fact that the government's been missing in action. You've put out adverts saying as much. We've heard last week from Gordon Brown. Martin Lewis has been strong on this. Sir Ed Davey, they've been the opposition, and we haven't heard anything from Labour. And now it seems you've sat there and you've thought, oh, Sir Ed Davey's come up with a good plan. Let's take a bit of that and use that instead.
Look, I've just given you a comprehensive answer on that, which is to say we've been working on energy bills for 12 months now, and it was back at the beginning of July I asked my team for a fully costed plan. Now, if I hadn't put a fully costed plan on the table, your questions to me this morning would be, well, how are you going to pay for it? You haven't set that out, Keir. So I said to the team, I want all of the forecasts, the last of which, the credible forecast, came through in the middle of last week. I want to wait for those, make sure that we've got the accurate figures. What's that number going to go up to in the autumn? And then I want to set out, lock, stock and barrel, how are we going to pay for it so that we have a fully costed, comprehensive plan on the table. And frankly, for millions of people who are really anxious about what's going to happen in the autumn, they're not going to start asking about who said what when in the course of last week. They're going to say, have you got, Keir, a comprehensive plan that will actually help me with the bills that I can't pay? And the answer to that is yes, because the Labour Party is on your side, those struggling families, and we've made the choice of a windfall tax on the oil and gas companies that have made excess profits. That is a political choice which we, the Labour Party, have made. The Conservative Party hasn't made that choice, can't make that choice, because all we've seen from them is internal squabbling between the leadership hopefuls, who are all arguing about just how awful they've been in government, and a Prime Minister who is a lame duck because he's saying, even when he's back from holiday, he's saying, I know there's a problem with energy bills, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Well, that's not good enough.
Sir Keir, whoever the next Prime Minister is, your job legally is to be ready to go at a moment's notice to lead a government. Now, I heard about your compelling narrative and the Labour Party who wants to support the poorest. 8 million people, as you will be aware, live in unsafe housing. They're worried about eating or heating their home. Real anxiety. Now, you talk about your background, and there are millions of people in that situation. But why should this price cap affect or be a benefit to all families, especially, for example, you, who are able to afford that price hike?
Well, all families are facing this price hike, and therefore everybody needs help, and the additional benefit of doing it across the board in stopping the price rise in the first place is that that takes inflation down. So our plan takes inflation down from what may well be 13% to about 9%. So it brings inflation down overall. So our plan answers the question, what are you going to do about the price rises this autumn? And also, what are you going to do about inflation? But just to go on from that, because I do recognise that those families that are struggling the most need extra help. So whilst we're cancelling most of what the government's put on the table, the bit we're not cancelling is the £650 payment to those on universal credit and to pensioners. And in addition, what I announced on Friday was that for those 4 million households who pay on prepayment meters, who pay a premium, if you can believe it, we would absolutely take that away. It's outrageous, it's immoral. And those 4 million, families are often the struggling
no doubt
the
this
hardest.
can be continued in a party political broadcast, and I think you've laid out the case to be continued in due course. One of the things that you've been quite clear about is this should go to people who need help most, many of whom are public service workers, right? Up and down the country, again, behind the blue wall that you need to win the hearts and minds of. Rail workers, post office workers, nurses threatening to go on strike. In your own profession, the legal profession is taking industrial action. You were quite clear that frontbenchers should not be on picking lines. In other words, it's not appropriate for political leaders to strike. That's in 2022. You had something rather different to say in 2020 outside of SOAS. I wonder if you could have a listen to this, Sir Keir.
I've just been with your colleagues round the corner at SOAS, got a picket line out there, and before Christmas across University College there were picket lines, as you probably know, all the way around. And it's really important you get politicians to come out and support you and stand with you in this.
Sir Keir, I'd assume, bearing in mind, just taking one of the examples I gave you, bearing in mind how important justice is, you've stood up for that it needs to be fair and it's unavailable to ordinary people. We don't have a democracy under the rule of law. You would support, for example, the legal profession who are taking industrial action at the moment. You would stand squarely behind them and other people striking.
Well, look, what I've said about this is, firstly, I completely understand the anxiety of those people who are taking action because they can't pay their bills. Wages have been stagnant for the best part of a decade, and there's a cost of living crisis, and the government is absent. So I understand the impact on working families, whichever sector they are in. And I, of course, support the right to go on strike.
Everybody supports the right to go on strike. You were a lawyer. Everybody understands that. I'm going to just ask you one of the examples. They'll be remiss of me not to put it to you. Do you support the lawyers who are taking industrial action and the post office workers, but the lawyers especially, right, who can't afford to represent their clients or represent victims?
Well, I understand their concerns. I absolutely support the right to strike. The point I've been making throughout the summer on this is that I want the Labour Party not to be in opposition, but to be in government, because the single most significant thing we could do for everybody who is struggling to make ends meet, whether they're on strike or not, the single most important thing we could do is to have a Labour government. And if you're in government, your job is to resolve issues, to get around the table, whether it's rail strikes or any other sort of strikes. Get people around the table, resolve the issues. And you can't be in government around the cabinet table and then go to a picket line. Of course you can express support for those who need support. Of course that's perfectly legitimate. But I'm absolutely focused on getting a Labour government, and a Labour government, any responsible government, has a role in these negotiations, and that role is to get people around the table and to resolve the issues that arise. And I'm single-mindedly focused on that. But do I support the right to strike? Of course I do. Do I understand
that wasn't the question,
that millions
Keir,
of people...
the question was, do you support these strikers? I'll take that as a yes, no, maybe. But thank you very much.